Hey Taylor, are you following the story about the NSA and now they have access to all of the phone records from Verizon? It's really surprising.
Yeah, and it looks like they've gone beyond phone records at this point. The interconnects between Google and Facebook, the NSA has compromised. It's a program called Prism, and they would have access to just about everything at that point.
That's pretty bad. I think we need to make sure that our faculty and students know about this stuff, especially with journalism, advertising, media cinema studies. I mean, everybody really should know about this stuff.
Well, it's been reported by a guy by the name of Glenn Greenwald, a journalist. So it's really important for them to know about this type of data and this type of compromise because there's not enough people reporting this information.
Would you be interested in teaching a class on it? I think it'd be a good one.
We should, yeah. With you, that would be awesome.
Before we can discuss what needs to be secure or private, we need to define what we mean by the words data and metadata. Data is usually the first thing we think of when we think of any electronic information. Typically the things tracked or stored in a system to accomplish some sort of activity. In a software like Microsoft Excel, the data is what we have in our spreadsheet. On a website, the data is the information we submit as part of an order form. Now, in a social media app like Instagram, the data could be the picture I took of my nephew last week. Between metadata and data is probably the easier term to conceptualize because it's very familiar and obvious when we look at something digital. Metadata, on the other hand, is more complex because it can be very subtle both in terms of what might be metadata and how it can be used. Let's look back at my example that I just gave of the data and for the metadata. In an Excel spreadsheet, who created the file, where the data originally came from would all be metadata. Metadata of a website form would be things like my web browser, what operating system I use, what time it was when I submitted the form. In the case of my nephew's photo, metadata would include information like where the picture was taken, what exposure setting was on my camera at the time. As we consider security and privacy, we have to examine both data and metadata for the priorities to set to protect both of them. Even in social networks where things are almost completely public and metadata is often very private, something where a company can gain a lot of value from its users. Data security describes how access to data is controlled. Companies theoretically work hard to keep their data very secure so that their customers have access only to their own data. They should also try to make sure that only authorized employees have access to specific information. Same security practices are done with things like student data here at the University of Illinois. Measures are in place to make sure a student can access only their own data and that only other authorized parties like their instructors or their advisors are allowed to access that private information. Now, when security is broken or accidentally left open in some fashion, we call it a data breach. Generally, there are two types of data breaches. The first is due to technological vulnerabilities, like a bug in a computer system that accidentally allows unauthorized access. Now, there may also be multiple related vulnerabilities, which as a whole can result in a data breach. The second category includes human factors. Maybe someone forgot their USB drive in a public area, maybe someone accidentally uploaded private data to a publicly accessible website, or maybe someone fell victim to a social engineering attack that revealed their password. A hacker may make use of both technological vulnerabilities and the human factors in order to complete a successful attack that creates a data breach. All of this helps inform us of how information we want to keep secret can potentially be exposed to people that would be bad for our sources, our organizations, our customers, and ourselves.
One of the interesting concepts that we want to explore in this class is privacy. Do we have a right to privacy? As American citizens, many of our rights are codified in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So the first question that comes up is there a right to privacy in the Constitution? It's a little bit murky. Many would say that there is, many would say that there isn't. At the end of the day, there is no expressed right to privacy in the Constitution. What has been argued by Justice Brandeis and others is that the idea of privacy exists in the 3rd, 4th, and 14th Amendment, things that protect your home and your person, for example. But since there is no explicit right to privacy, what does that mean for the government? What does that mean for third-party companies? In IT security, we often talk about something that says if the product is free, then more than likely you are the product itself. So when you're using these free services, what privacy aspects are you giving up by using them, and how could you protect yourself more, or what other products might you use to protect your privacy further?
All right, so As we think about the topics of security and privacy, it's important to realize that technology moves much faster than the law. For example, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act was signed into law in 1998 in order to give copyright owners more controls over their content, as well as limit the liability of internet service providers in the legal system of the United States. That law came into being 5 full years after the first graphic web browser in 1993 was created right here at the University of Illinois. In more recent times, we can look at the currently most retweeted tweet of all time, Ellen DeGeneres' photo from 2014 Academy Awards. The camera was owned by Ellen. Ellen may have signed an agreement with Samsung or the Academy. Bradley Cooper held the phone and pressed the button. Twitter is where it was published and shared all around the world millions of times. Who owns the rights to that picture? Probably Bradley Cooper, since he was the photographer. But as the law evolves along with technologies like social media, there are a lot of gray areas. It's important that we consider how the law may change or even be interpreted as we explore security and privacy.